Hello and welcome on in, everybody. Good to see you. Happy Friday. My name's Sam Peterson. I'm going to be your host for today's Photoshop challenge. And today we're doing a spooky Halloween portrait. So, Halloween's on Monday. I thought we'd do something a little festive and do some scary portrait. We're going to kind of create a monster sort of portrait. What's going on, everybody? Good to see you. What's up, Wade, Frank, Lisa? Hello, Afrosia, Kevin. What's up, Becca? General Kenobi, the one and only. Monica, man, we got a packed house already. Carol, what's going on, everybody? Good to see you. So let me show you what we're going to be doing today. Let's jump into Photoshop. This is the starter file we're working with. You should be able to find it in the description below. This is going to have the portrait that I'm using and the same assets that I'm using. And I can show you something we're going to be kind of transforming him. So it's pretty creepy. I hope I didn't go too creepy and scare you guys. But, you know, it is Halloween after all. So I'm going to move that away, and that's kind of what we're going to be doing. Just a few different techniques, a lot of masking, a lot of texture overlays, and we can create something like this. Of course, you can feel free to take this any direction that you want. So what I want to do first off is go ahead and select our background layer, and I want to duplicate that. So I'm going to duplicate it with Control or Command J. And then I'm going to go into my quick selection tool up here, top left, and do select subject. Now this isn't going to be a clean mask. We have a black background. It's very hard to find the edges when the portrait basically blends into the black background, the hair and certain parts that are in shadow. So this is good enough. I'm just going to take what it gives me. Maybe I'll take my lasso tool and hold on Shift to add to my selection and just grab part. I'm kind of guessing where that body is, and that's fine. This is just in case we want to do something with the background. It gives us some flexibility. So I'm going to go ahead and mask that, and then I'm going to duplicate it again, Control or Command J, and I'm just going to right click the mask for that duplicate and do Apply Layer Mask. Now we have the original, the masked, and the applied layer. I just like to keep those for me in case I need them later. So what I want to do is make a black background for this. Control or Command Shift N, hotkey for the new layer, and we'll just call this BG for background. I'm going to color pick that black background. Yeah, it's completely black. We'll just fill it in. Drag that below my figure layer. I'll just name this figure. All right, so I kind of set up my layers here, organized them. I like to just have backups and keep everything kind of named and organized, because especially on this document, we're going to have lots of layers. So I would recommend naming them and grouping them when necessary. What did you type to get a photo like that? I typed, I think, like dramatic portrait. I tried things on Adobe stock. I have the little free tab selected so you can all use this. But I tried something like serious portrait or dramatic portrait. I believe those were probably the keywords I used. So what I want to do is I want to make this figure now a smart object. I'm going to right click it and do convert to smart object, and that's going to let us apply some various effects and keep those settings saved. I want to go into filter, and the first thing we're going to do is camera raw filter. And this is going to give us some options to kind of increase the texture of the skin that I want to play with. Let me try zooming in a little bit. And if I go to under basic, if I go to texture and I crank that up, you'll see it makes the details in the skin a little bit more pronounced. The opposite happens if you crank it all the way down, it smooths it out. So I want to crank this all the way up. Clarity and dehaze are an option too. I would be careful with clarity because it starts making things look unrealistic very quickly. You'll see the hair becomes really harsh, but I might add a little bit of clarity. And dehaze kind of does a similar thing where it's usually meant to get the haze out of an image if there's like a lot of atmospheric perspective or haze. And so it's kind of bringing out the contrast as well. And that can be kind of a cool effect. So I'm going to click OK. I think that looks kind of good. And you can see that difference. It just brings out the shadows and the skin texture. And, you know, if we're going for a creepy look, that's definitely what we want. So that is our camera raw. And then maybe what I want to do from here is go up to layer, new adjustment layer, hue and saturation. So we can make his skin tone anything we want. We can make it green, we can make it zombie, desaturated, whatever you want. So I'm going to right click that hue and saturation layer and do create clipping mask. So we're going to clip that to our portrait. Probably we don't really need it in this one, because the background's black, but I like to keep everything organized and clean. Um, so from here, I can just kind of play around with the slider, the hue slider, to get different skin tones. You do like blue or purple, green, whatever you want. Go for like a witch effect. I might just try like a desaturated kind of zombie skin, which maybe be like a purpley tone. Maybe like -112. I could try desaturating that a bit. I don't want it super saturated. If you want to go more cartoony, keep it saturated, but I'm going to go a little bit more movie realistic. And then maybe like 43 or so. I think that looks pretty good. I could also play with the opacity. I mean, you always have the ability to kind of ease the effect off or ease it up. So I may, yeah, I could always take it down to like 70, 76 or something like that. If I'm just trying to keep it sort of realistic, that's what I could do. So what I can do now is I can select the figure, and because this is a smart object, it'll save this setting as well. But if we go up into Filter, Liquify, he doesn't look angry enough. He looks very like straight-faced. I want him to be a little bit angrier because he's a zombie and he's mad about it. So I'm going to select my forward warp tool, the top tool up at the left, and I'm just going to maybe increase my brush size, give him a slightly more furrowed brow. Let's make him look a little bit more mad. I could even do it with the mouth and give him a bit more of a frown. I think the key with the Liquify tool and having realistic effects is using a larger brush size. The smaller you make it, the more it kind of like affects things in a way that doesn't look natural. When you have a larger brush size, you can move entire areas in a more uniform way. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Or sorry, it gives you a little bit more realism when you use a larger brush size. There, now he's angry. So I could preview it. You can see the difference there. It's kind of silly, but now he looks more mad, and that's what I want. What I want to do here is go into my asset folder, and we're going to start adding textures onto this. So in the asset folder, I gave you various textures to work with. I think we're going to use all of these. See if we have time for that. But feel free to use whatever textures you want. Experiment with different textures. I'm going to do Controller Command J to duplicate that. Bring this out of my asset folder. I like to keep my original assets there just in case I need them. And we got this. So what I want to do is I want to right click this layer and do Convert to Smart Object. Anytime I'm going to be resizing things and moving them around and transforming them, I like to make smart objects just to keep it non-destructive in case I need to scale it back up or anything like that. I know I want these drips across his face, so I'm kind of positioning it size-wise and positioning-wise just so I can get those over his face. And I'm going to go into my blending modes and try different options. I selected one and I can use the arrow keys just to scroll through them quickly, just to preview different ones. Overlay's not too bad. Overlay's kind of an option. I think color burn kind of has a cool look too. It's a bit intense, but we can ease it off with masking and with opacity if we need to. So let me see here. I'm going to create a mask on this. So at the bottom of my layers panel, I'm going to click this little rectangle icon for add layer mask. And I'm going to take a soft round brush. Just the default soft round brush is good for this. Large brush size. Use a low flow if you're using a mouse, if you're not using a tablet. And then you can use black to conceal the effect or white to reveal it. So what I'm going to do is just soften the edge there on the shoulder. I don't like the color burn effect in the shadows. You can see it's really darkening down the dark side of his face, and this is already such a dark portrait that I want to reveal that again. So I'm going to go and paint with black on that shadow side to kind of to reveal my shadows a bit and make that part of the face a little bit more clear. I think that looks pretty good. I kind of like the dramatic look around some parts of his the the light side of his face. But I'm going to mask it off on the hair too. We're losing detail in the hair. I'm just using a soft round brush with a big brush size. So it has a feathered edge. This isn't precise masking, and I don't think it needs to be for this. So I think that looks pretty good. I might go ahead and lower my opacity a bit. This effect is fairly strong. And I want it kind of subtle because we're going to be layering different texture effects. So I could always crank this opacity up later, but I put it down to like 75%. So he's kind of got this creepy texture on him, right? He's already starting to look fairly monster-like, but I think we could take that a step further. So let's go and give him some makeup. You know, he's got to have that eye shadow for that dramatic smoky eye. So I'm going to do Control or Command Shift N, again, hotkey for new layer. We'll do eye makeup, maybe. And I'm going to select, let's try a multiply layer. That's kind of my go-to for that type of thing. I'm going to select a textured brush. And I'm not going to select full black, maybe kind of like a slightly lighter bluish tone. You know, you can try it out and see what it looks like. Maybe something like that. So what I want to do is select my quick selection tool up over here. And this is going to be a really messy mask. I'm just going to try to grab the eye the best I can. I don't need this one perfect. I just want to get the spot that I really don't want to paint over. So that's close enough. This is not precise. This doesn't need to be, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to click the mask button here. And now if I paint in the layer, it's going to only go on the eye. That's not what I want. I want to select my mask, do Control I to invert that mask. And now we can paint around the eye without having it get into the eye. So I just kind of want to do this, you know, building up the texture a bit. This sort of smoky eye look. I kind of like the texture and the hard edges. Kind of gives it a dramatic look. I might do some of these like, I don't know, creepy, like drippy looks. The extra creepy atmosphere. He's either in a metal band or he's a zombie. I'm not quite sure yet. You could also use the smudge tool if you want to play around with something, any of this, but I think that it looks fine. Something I might try here is just, I don't like that hard edge right around the eye. So I'm just going to use the eraser. And this is why the mask didn't need to be precise, because I was going to erase some of this out anyway. The mask just ensured I didn't have to deal with it being on the actual eye. So I might just kind of erase it right around the edge just for a softer, more realistic look. Now what I want to do here is experiment maybe with a different layer mode. I want to do Control or Command J to duplicate that eye makeup, and we'll do, I think overlay tends to look good sometimes. Like, yeah, see that overlay effect? We get a little bit more contrast popping through, staying in the eyes. So what I might do is put the multiply on top and just lower the opacity. So I can get this nice look, which I like, and then just a little bit more. Let's see. Without it being like overly opaque. I think something like that looks pretty good. We're at like 65%. Try 70%. There we go. All right, so that's pretty cool. Kind of creepy. Let me just check chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. I dodge and burn on the cheekbones to accent them. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a good technique. This one already has quite a bit of contrast depending on the image you have. If you really want to push that, yeah, dodge and burn is a great technique for that. Oh yeah, his lips. I might do that on the multiply layer. We might just darken it down. Yeah, I mean, this is really just a makeup layer. You can put it wherever you want, but just the, you could put in darker lips a little bit there. Could erase it out around the edges for a softer look. That kind of makes him, hey, he looks like he's in a metal band, but maybe he'll look more zombie-like as we get some more texture. Why keep the overlay layer? So the overlay layer just has a different effect. I think the overlay layer shows a lot more contrast in the lights, and I like that. It has the roundness of the eyes a little bit more. but this just darkens it down overall. So I want to be sparing with my multiply layer, because if I have it too much, it destroys all of the lighting information and it just starts to look a little bit fake. So I'm just trying to get the best of both worlds. So sometimes I'll do that. I'll have various blending modes on different opacities just to get like right in the look that I want. Let's see here. So what I want to do next, I think, is we're actually going to try painting the eyes a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to get, let's do eye paint. I actually want to get a fairly clean selection. So personally, I'm just going to use the lasso tool. You can use the pen tool if you prefer that. I do have a tablet, and I do use a tablet frequently daily. So the lasso tool is actually a tool I'm pretty comfortable with, just like the manual selections. I found when we were doing it before that the quick selection tool has a little bit of trouble grabbing the precise edge. So since it's just this eye, I would just use whatever precision tool you like. So for me, that's the lasso tool. I know a lot of people really like the pen tool. Pen tool gives you a lot of control, especially if you had a mouse. If I just worked with a mouse, probably be using the pen tool here. All right, so then I selected mask, and that should, if we go into our layer and we paint in the eye, that should mask it out so we can only paint on the eye here. All right. Where can I learn what each blending mode actually does besides trial and error? There's actually a really good resource for that. Does anyone have that on hand? I think Jesus Ramirez may have a guide for that, or one of the evangelists, I believe. Um, yeah, Jesus or Paul, I'm not sure. If anyone has that resource, definitely put it in the chat. So what I'm going to do from here is just paint white on the eyes. Now, this is actually like a manual painting part of the stream. Usually I don't go into straight painting, but I think for this one, it's kind of fun to do it this way, and this is a good technique. So what I'm actually doing is I'm color picking from the eye, and then I'm just painting over. I'm trying to maintain that shadow that we have. So I'm continually going to reference the original eye because we have that deep shadow on the right side. I don't want to lose that, so I'll paint with that same color. But the trick is just to paint over the eyeball itself. So we can get this kind of like creepy, I don't know, undead milky eye effect, but still keep that original form. So this one does have quite a bit of a learning curve. You just want to continually reference the original. Keep in mind on the top eyelid, you're going to have a little bit of a shadow. Towards the corners, you're going to have a bit of a shadow. But what I would recommend doing is using a soft round brush, especially if you're doing this with a mouse. You can do this with a mouse, it's very doable, but just keep the flow down pretty low and just, get these kind of gradual clicks where you're color picking and clicking. Select that shadow, paint with it a bit, select the new tone that you need, paint with that a bit, and you can just kind of go on like that. So I'm going to try to do this kind of quick, but this is basically just a painting process. And I kind of like to do this for, I think, a little bit more of a realistic effect. But the key is to reference the original eye. Look at the lighting of the original eye and use that. Color pick it. I lost some of that light that should be there. Now, I don't want to spend too long on this, but you want it to have, sort of a realistic look. Shade it around the corners. Reference the original image, and I think that's pretty good. So the last thing I might want to do is get that highlight in there. And I can reference right where the original highlight was. Paint it in there. And get some kind of creepy undead eyes. Now we could also just lower the opacity if you want the pupils to show through a little bit. I think that's still pretty creepy. It also will show more of the original information while still giving a creepy look. And what we could do is take it a step farther, go Control Shift N, make a new layer, I could take like a smudge tool and just make sure sample all layers at the top is selected. This is on a new layer, and just kind of soften that iris. Because if you have this sort of eye effect, I think it looks a little bit more believable if that iris is kind of not as clear. So anyway, that's our eyes. Let's group these eye layers because there's a lot of them. 4 layers. I'm going to shift select, Control G, and we'll just do eyes. All right. So let's see. We got a few minutes left. Let's get some more textures in here. I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to go to my assets and let's grab another texture. I kind of want this mold texture. Control or Command J to duplicate it, drag it out of my asset layer. We'll right click that layer, make it a smart object like we're doing to all of them. And I'll rotate this. Whoops, I gotta hide my asset layer so it's not in the way. Rotate this like that. You can hold shift to snap it in place. Shrink it a bit, kind of positioning it where I want on the face for a creepy look. Maybe we'll try that. And I think color burn might be the go-to for this as well. I try scrolling through the different blending modes, seeing what looks best for this situation. But I want to try, let's try that color burn. Yeah, it's very creepy. It's very off-putting. So let's go with that. Now, this is a very intense effect. This isn't really necessarily what I want for the final thing. So I'm going to lower the opacity quite a bit. And the opacity we can take down. Let's just see what looks good. Yeah, we can try like 30 or something for that. So that looks pretty good. And you can mask this, create a mask, paint it off. You know, again, a soft round brush, paint it out where you don't like it. If it's somewhere that you don't want or you want to lighten it up in a certain area, you can just paint black there to kind of really fine tune it and adjust it. We can try another texture too. Let's just throw some more textures on here. It's texture time. All right, so this texture looks pretty good. Control or Command J to copy it. Drag our copy out there. And this one, whoops. Let's hide our asset layer so we can actually see what we're working with. Right click it, convert smart object. Again, we're just converting all these to smart objects. And for this texture, I think this is just kind of a good overall texture. And multiply, I think, might be the one we go to for this. So this is just kind of an overall gritty texture. I'll probably do a separate one for the shoulders. You can see we're not really affecting the shoulders. I don't think there's enough time. So I'm going to do that. And just lower the opacity again. It's a bit much. Maybe 50, 60. It's just a little additional grit. And let's put our last one in. You know what? Actually, if you find any of these are too harsh, this is a smart object. So what we could do is we could go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we could try just a little bit of a blur. Maybe like 2 pixels, 1.5. Let's go ahead and do 2. And you can see it still gives us some of that texture without being so harsh. I can always double click it and change it if I do want to go to 1.5 since this is a smart object. If I thought I blurred it too much. All right, so let's save that. And I think we got one more layer we can fit on, one more asset. We got to put all the textures on. It's really fun, and a lot of this challenge is really just experimenting with different textures, trying different blending modes, positioning them different ways, masking them different ways. It's really just layering a lot of textures. So what I can do here is make this a smart object. Again, right click, smart object. And just lower this down. Now I want to put it there, press enter to confirm, and just try some different blending modes. Now darken looks pretty good. Darken and multiply. I like multiply shows a bit more of the texture. You try some of these. Linear burn looks kind of interesting. Um, color burn works pretty well. I like linear burn. Let's go with that. Kind of almost looks like the peeled paint kind of looks like skin almost, which is super creepy. So I'm going to leave that there, and I can always mask this and paint it out anywhere. I think it's too much. So, I mean, these are just some of the effects that we got for this creepy look. You can always go back and change some of these layers, like the hue and saturation. We could always go in there and change it around. You know, if you want like a different effect just to see how a different color might look. So try that. There's also things like color lookups. You can go into different adjustment layers. You could try color lookup, try different kind of finishing layers just to see what kind of colors you might want to do, because there's some cool ones here that will give you different effects. So it's kind of fun to play around with that. And this one's kind of interesting. So have fun with this. Just experiment, try different things. I would probably crop this in since we didn't affect his shoulders at all. But that's what we got. Thanks so much for joining me today, everyone. I do appreciate it. I'll see you guys all next time. Have a good one.